you're going to hear a story today or some thoughts. Hopefully it'll raise some awareness stuff for you guys. We feel it's an important thing for your age group to be aware of these issues. But I'll stop talking there. I'll go into it. John Broderick was the Chief Justice, or former Chief Justice in New Hampshire. And now he is the, forget the title, the executive. He works at Dartmouth, and he does some good stuff there. And part of what he's doing, as he feels his most rewarding work, is this stuff that he's going to talk about to you today. And part of it is to talk about the issue of mental health and to desensitize that issue for us, and so we can help our friends and family and stuff. And John will take it away and do the rest.
Good morning. How are you? Yes? You're not in class. How bad can it be? First of all, I want to thank Woodstock High School for inviting me here today. And I want to thank all of you for being here this morning. I know you didn't have much choice in the matter, but you do have a choice on whether you listen to me or not, and I hope you listen. Because I need your help. That's why I came to Woodstock today. For the last 3.5 years, I've been speaking wherever I'm invited about changing the conversation and the culture around mental illness, because we need to. I'm a baby boomer, by the way, not that you could have ever guessed that. But in my generation, no one talked about mental illness. No one. It just wasn't a conversation that anyone was willing to have. Your generation is different. I love your generation, by the way, I mean that. You are the least judgmental generation in the history of the United States. And if we're going to change the conversation and the attitude around mental illness, your generation is going to do it if you want to help. But that's why I came today. I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm sorry about that, but that's where I grew up. I'm from a very middle-class family. I grew up in a town north of Boston, very leafy, but very middle class. My dad was a high school science teacher, and my mother wanted to be a nurse, but her family couldn't have afforded that. She worked in the neighboring town in an office. My best friend, when I was 10 years old, lived right across the street from my house. His father was a graduate of MIT. In my childhood, in my neighborhood, MIT was rock star status. My friend's uncle, his father's brother, never finished high school. He was an inpatient at the Danvers Mental Hospital in Danvers, Massachusetts. Every adult who ever spoke of that place, and every kid, including me, used to call it the nut house. We must have thought that was funny. Nobody was ashamed or embarrassed to say that, by the way. Looking back all these years later, I think we all should have been ashamed. I think now the people confined or treated at Danvers, and all the people love those people, but that's what we call it. And often in the summertime, on a Sunday, my friend's father would pick his brother up at the nut house and bring him to their house across the street. I was 10 years old. I can still see that man standing by the garage, looking at the flowers. He never looked at me, by the way, never spoke to me, never gestured to me. But he was pretty scary, I thought. He was, General, good morning. He was, after all, in the nut house. And I never had the courage on those warm Sundays to cross the road to play with my friend. I just didn't. And when that man would leave my neighborhood late on Sunday nights, I felt a sense of relief. Because I knew nobody in my town had a mental health problem. I actually believed that. And so I knew even as a 10-year-old kid that this guy was somehow a one-off, that I would never know anyone or see anyone the rest of my life who had a mental health problem. And I was wrong about that, by the way, which is one of the reasons I've devoted many of my waking hours in the last 3.5 years to the topic that brings me to Woodstock Union High School today. Some decades after that childhood in a different state, New Hampshire, a different town, Manchester, and on a street somewhat different than the one I grew up on, mental illness crossed that road from my childhood and took up residence in my own house. My wife and I are baby boomers. We didn't know anything about mental illness. Maybe at the extreme we would have spotted it, but nowhere else. But it was in my house and it was growing. I had two sons, 11 and 13. They took up residence in my 13-year-old son. We didn't see it, and he didn't understand it. He thought it was just him. It makes sense when you think about it. How would you know that you have a mental health problem? Just how you are, how you see other people, how you react to the world around you, but it's real. But he thought it was just him. When my son graduated from the 8th grade, he woke up that Saturday morning and told us that he didn't want to go to his graduation. It was summertime, and we thought he was just lazy. That wasn't why, by the way, but we wouldn't know it for years. We said, you have to go to your graduation, and so he went, but he wasn't happy about it. He was a really talented artist, my son, and so he spent a lot of time when he was a kid in his bedroom with the door closed and his desk, drawing. Today I would describe it as withdrawing. But I was pretty ignorant about mental illness back then. I'm not ignorant now, by the way. I'm not ignorant now. My son started smoking in high school. He kept that pretty well hidden. He had friends at Trinity High School in Manchester, but not as many as his younger brother, who was 2 years behind him. If you look at the yearbook for the year he graduated, you'll find his photograph with all the other graduates. But if you look through the yearbook, at the basketball games, the school plays, the school dances, you won't see him in those candy shops because he wasn't at those places. He's probably home drawing or withdrawing. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. I see it now. He did okay in high school, but not as well as he could have. I always thought he was smarter than his grades, but he always tested very well. And he got into a pretty good college in New York, and then off he went. And I don't know if it's true or not, you guys might know, but I hear sometimes when kids go to college, they drink. Have you heard that? Could be true. I'm not recommending it. I'm just noting it. Sadly, in my son's case, it was true. I could hear it in his voice on some of those weekend phone calls. It was pretty alarming, actually. I talked to him about it. He'd say, Dad, I don't have a drinking problem. We don't need to talk about it. Over time, we'd be on campus, and his friends would seek us out. We'd never met them, but they were concerned about his drinking. We'd talk to him about it. He'd say, Dad, I don't drink more than anybody else. I don't know why they're telling you that. I couldn't prove it or disprove it, but I didn't think they were making it up. My son looked more disheveled. His appearance had changed. But kids in college don't dress like I do, thank God. But he seemed more disheveled than his classmates. I just chalked it up to being away at college and having that freedom. That wasn't why, but I wouldn't know that for a long time. My son graduated from college. Knowing what I now know, I'm in awe of him. I don't know how he did that. He must have willed himself to that degree. He'd done okay, but not as well as he could have. He tested well. He got into a pretty good graduate school in Boston. And then he came home to live with us in New Hampshire, commuted to class 3 days a week. At this point, it was clear to us he was drinking pretty much every day. It was alarming to watch it. He tried to flip his life so we wouldn't see it, but he really couldn't do it. He had to go to class. We'd talk to him about it. He'd say, Dad, I don't have a drinking problem. We really don't need to talk about it. We must have talked about it too much because he moved north of Boston to finish his school. And when he graduated with a master's degree, which seems to me almost impossible knowing what I now know. I admire his courage. He got a job very quickly, which wasn't surprising. He's really smart, I mean really smart. He can talk to you about the Red Sox or the Celtics, or rock music, or Aristotle. Not because he's read about Aristotle, but because he's read Aristotle. He's one of the best read people I've ever met, then or now. He's a self-taught musician, he's a terrific artist, he's funny. So it wasn't a surprise he got a job quickly, but it was a surprise. It only lasted a month. It wasn't his fault he said he lost the job. The next job took longer to get and lasted for less time. It wasn't his fault he said he lost the job. And then he came home and he was living with us in New Hampshire. And he was drinking pretty much every day, trying to hide it. He'd take graphic design courses wherever he could. He always excelled at those. But he had part-time jobs, hourly rate jobs, nothing that you would think someone with his degrees would be taking. It was hard to watch it. His younger brother had just gotten married, had gotten a master's degree. His life was moving ahead, as you would hope. But my oldest son, with all of his talent, was just stuck. And eventually my wife and I reached